following lesson, inshallah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وعلى أصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Before we begin, inshallah, there's just some questions by the sisters. I'd just like to quickly read, inshallah. The first question is, what's the difference between Islamic banks and conventional banks? Can you buy a house using Islamic banks? No, that's the first question. The answer to this question, we cannot answer it in this lecture, inshallah, because it's a question that deserves a very detailed answer. And the main difference between a conventional bank and an Islamic bank is that conventional banks deal with interest and usury, and they're usually unethical, whereas in Islamic banks that's not the case. So obviously there's more to the story than meets the eye. So I'm going to, inshallah ta'ala, if Allah gives us tawfiq, maybe the next time I come, we will continue with these qawa'id and also speak about mortgages, Islamic banks, and conventional banks and the difference between the two. So I'm not going to answer it now. The next question is about university fees and university loan. Again, that's a question that deserves a more intricate or technical answer. The simple answer is that there's a difference of opinion with regards to student loans. And the first opinion, they say that student loans are riba, and it's a loan-based riba, which means it's impermissible. The second opinion is that it is not a loan, but rather a mudaraba contract, and the government are investing in the student, and it's not considered to be a loan because the money that the student is receiving does not have the characteristics of a loan, simply because of the fact that the government will write off this money or this loan after a set period of time. And so it doesn't have the same characteristics as a student, as a loan. The third opinion is that it is allowed if there is a hajj or a necessity. So these are the three opinions. Obviously there's more to it, there's adilla. Each group has their own proof. But I'm not going to say this is halal or this is haram, as I do not know. La adri, Allahu a'lam. Okay? There are scholars that say it's halal, there are scholars that say it's haram. But inshallah ta'ala, maybe the next time I come, or in future lessons, we can talk about this issue in a more detailed manner. The next question is, I work for a company, or the company that I work for gives bonuses at the end of the year. It is based on my yearly performance because I haven't technically worked for this money. Is it permissible to take? The answer to this question, the scholars of ta'ala, they say that it is both companies. If the company that you're working for is a halal company, or the services that they offer are halal, is halal, then the bonuses that they offer, they're like gifts or al-hiba. So it's the type of contract that we mentioned. Who can say it? At-tabarru'at. Okay? So it's like a donation or a gift that they're giving. So the scholars, they say that's if it's halal company, then it's allowed for you to take these bonuses. And they're usually used as incentives to encourage the employee to work harder and earn more, basically. If the company obviously is a financial institution, like a riba-based bank, or it deals with usury, or for example, it's a company that, for example, sells services that are impermissible, like alcohol, then generally speaking, it's impermissible for you to work for them in the first place, which means that the bonuses that they give is also impermissible. Right. Next question, a friend wanted to sell her camera. I showed interest in it, but wasn't willing to buy it. The friend got back to me as she didn't find anyone to buy it. She wanted to get money fast. She also spoke of how it was. I can't read this. She also spoke of how it had some value to her or something. I proposed a solution. I will take the camera for the value of what she was selling it for £100. However, I will get back to her whether I actually wanted to keep it or return it. I really didn't have an intention of keeping it. I considered it as a form of saving. The friend found someone who was interested in it and got it and got in touch with me again. I wasn't sure if it was okay to verbally get exactly, or to actually get exactly £100 back after using it. When I received the camera, she was, it wasn't working. I cannot read this. The friend assumed it wasn't working after I had used it. As a result, I offered to only take £80 as it was the matter was unclear. Was what we do, was it haram or not? If it was haram, is there any way to make it right? Now, so if you bought the camera from her, and the offer and acceptance, what is apparent from the question is that there was an offer made by her, and then you accepted. What you intended does not really matter, because she's taking your words as face value. So you basically, if you accepted initially, then the transaction is complete. So it's upon you to give her £100, and it's upon her to accept the £100. What she did afterwards is impermissible. So what should have happened is, once you accepted, you were supposed to take the commodity, the camera, from her, and you own it, halas. But from what I can understand from the question is that she didn't give you the camera, and you bought the camera. You said to her after a week, "I'll take the camera after a week." It doesn't matter when you take the camera. This is you have basically compromised on your rights. So you've told her, "This is £100. Keep the camera for me, and I'll take it from you after a week." What she did was she spoke to someone else, and entered into another contract for something that she didn't actually physically own. So now the camera is yours, £100. So she sold something that did not belong to her in the second transaction. Okay, so she sold something that didn't belong to her. So what is compulsory upon her is for her to give you the camera and for you to give her the £100, and then afterwards you can if you was to, for example, if you were to compromise, or to say to her, for example, that I will sell the camera back to you, then you run the risk of falling into what's known as bay'ul ina. Okay, bay'ul ina, which we'll discuss later on. Bay'ul ina is selling a commodity back to that original seller for a lower price than you actually bought it for. It's called bay'ul ina. So, for example, I go to you and I say to you, "Okay, I'm going to purchase this commodity from you on credit, مؤجلا, for £100. I'll give you the £100 after a year." So then you give me the commodity, and then I turn around and sell it to you for £80, for example, for £80. And then what happens is you take the £80. Okay, so now I have to pay you back £100. So you've made a profit of £20. So this is called bay'ul ina, which is la yajuz. So if you've given her the product, so if she's given you the product, and you've given her the £100, and you've bought it halan, on the spot, then that's it. The transaction is finalized. You can sell it back to her later on. But if you've bought the camera on credit, on credit means that you've agreed to give her the money after a week, you haven't actually physically given her the money, and then you've used the product and then given it back to her, and then sold it back to her for £80 or whatever, £110, then you fall into bay'ul ina. Do you understand the tafriq? Okay? So from the question, it's apparent that it's better the transaction was finalized initially, and then something happened afterwards. So it depends on your intention, basically. So let's continue, inshallah ta'ala, with the mas'ala, with the issues. So we were in the first qa'ida, al-aslu fil buyu' al-ibaha, and we studied bay'u al-taqsid, the issue of buying and selling in taqsid. Now we go into the next mas'ala issue, which is bay'u al-murabaha. Bay'u al-murabaha is cost plus financing, or markup financing. Bay'u al-murabaha is basically a contract of sale which a commodity is sold on profit. So it's a contract of sale in which basically a commodity or a sil'a is sold on profit. So the seller is obliged to tell the buyer the cost price and then the profit that they'll make afterwards. So say for example you go to, you have a sil'a, a commodity, and you want to do bay' al-murabaha with this commodity. So you say to the buyer, I have bought this commodity, this pen or this whatever car costs £10,000, and I am going to, and on top of that 2.5% profit. I am now making 2.5% profit. So this is called bay'u al-murabaha. Usually with regards to banks, it's a contract of sale basically between a bank and its client for the sale of goods at a price, okay? Plus basically an agreed profit margin for the bank, okay? And so the contract involves purchasing goods by the bank, and then the bank sells to the client at an agreed markup, okay? So it's like the bank, for example, you go to the bank and you say to the bank, I want to purchase a BMW or a particular car, or any car basically, and I want to, you give them the muwasafat, you give them the actual description of the car. So the bank goes and purchases a car for say £10,000, and then the bank tells you that they've purchased the car for £10,000, and that they tell you they want £2,000 extra, £12,000. So this is just bay' al-murabaha. This is permissible. It's the classic bay' al-murabaha. There's another type of bay' al-murabaha, which is bay' al-murabaha lil-wa'id bil-shara'. It's a type of contract which is a cost plus financing lil-wa'id bil-shara', with a promise to actually purchase. So the client is making a promise to purchase from the seller after the seller goes and buys the actual product. It's called bay' al-murabaha lil-wa'id bil-shara'. So basically it's when a person goes to a bank, for example, and he says to the bank, I want to purchase that particular car for with an installment. And he gives them the description of the car that he wants. So the bank then says, okay, طيب, خلاص, we will sell it to you. Okay, نبيعها لك, will sell it to you for this price on credit for that specific period of time. And you say, قبلت, I have accepted. The only problem with this is that the bank doesn't actually possess or own that particular car yet. So they've sold something that they don't own. Okay, so the bank then, what does the bank do? The bank goes, because now they have your money, so they go and purchase that commodity for less than what you've given them, so that they can make a profit. This type of product is impermissible, or this type of sale is impermissible. Okay. However, the scholars, rahimahumullah ta'ala, they say that this scenario that I've now described, there are two situations, or two states. It has two states. The first state is if the act or the contract has been signed before the purchase of the product by the seller. Okay, this type of bay' is impermissible. So the contract that you have signed a contract with the bank, khalas waqa't, it's now impermissible because the bank, they've sold something that they do not possess. That's the first state. The second state is if, for example, there was a negotiation, okay, between you and the bank. Okay, you've made a promise to the bank, so no contract has been signed, but you've negotiated with the bank, and there's no contract has been signed. There's a negotiation, but no ijab or qabul happened. There was no offering and there was no acceptance. Okay, and each person or each entity or each party, you or the bank, they've got a choice. The bank, after they've bought the sil'a, they can change their minds and turn around and say, hang on a minute, we don't want to sell to you anymore. Or you can say to them, 1 second, I don't want to purchase it anymore. So the khiyar is still there. Okay? So according to the majority of the scholars, this type of bay' is permissible. This type of bay' is permissible. And it falls into the qa'ida, al-aslu fil buyu' al-ibaha. However, if they ask you to sign something, a ta'ahud, for example, there's some sort of ilzam, they tell you, listen, okay, you don't have to sign this contract, but if you don't purchase this car after we've bought it, then you have to pay damages, or you're liable for, there's an administration fee, or service charge, or any charge, doesn't matter what they call it. It now becomes, this type of bay', it becomes impermissible. Why? Because of the ilzam, because of the fact that they're forcing you to do something that you do not want to do. And there's no duress when it comes to bay'. Right, the next mas'ala is mas'alatul asrum. What's the ruling of buying and selling shares? Before we discuss the ruling, what exactly, ma hiya al-asrum, what exactly are shares? The scholars, rahimahullah ta'ala, they say that shares, remember ikhwan, that the vast majority of the financial transactions that take place are tu'tabar min al-nawazil, meaning that there are issues that are not mentioned in the books of fiqh, and that the scholars, the contemporary scholars, have had to look into the books of fiqh, look into the Quran and Sunnah, and find and derive rulings from them. Okay, so this is Bay'ul Asrum is min al-nawazil. These are issues that have occurred in the last, recently, basically. So what exactly is an asrum? Or it's the scholars, they say it's a share, juz'un min sharikatin qa'ima yashtarihi al-mushtari bi thamanin mu'ayyan. So a share is a portion, you're buying a portion from a company that is in existence. Okay, a company that is in existence. So the person, you're buying it for a specific price, a specific and defined price. So what do we understand from this? First and foremost, in order for a share to be acceptable, you have to buy a share from a company that's in existence. If the company is mawhum, if it's a figment of your imagination, or if it's, for example, one of those shell companies, a company that doesn't really exist, it's just there by name, then it becomes impermissible for you to purchase shares in those type of companies. So it has to be a company that's actually trading. If it's not a company that's trading and they're not buying or selling, then it's really not a company. Okay. Also, the thaman and the stock option or the actual price of the share has to be defined. It cannot be speculated. It can't be in speculation. So the share has to be defined. Right. So the asl of bay' al-asrum, the asl of this bay' is that it is permissible, okay, because it falls into the qa'ida al-asl fil buyu' al-ibaha. Right. However, the scholars, rahimahullah ta'ala, they've categorized bay' al-asrum, buying and selling shares from companies, into three different categories. Number one, asrum sharikat naqiyya, shares in companies that are pure. Okay, shares in companies that are pure, and they're basically companies that are pure in their service, meaning the service that they offer is pure. They're pure in their articles of association. Every company has what's known it has a memorandum of association or articles of association. So it means that these articles of association does not contain a clause which is deemed as impermissible. That's number two. And number three, its idara is mubah. The way the company is administered is also halal. So these are pure companies. An example of a pure company is like companies that sell rice, clothes, companies that companies that sell just mineral water, or any of those other companies. Right. Now, so obviously these companies, it's permissible for you to buy shares in these companies. The second type of company are companies that are purely haram, meaning that the services that they offer are haram, the products that they're selling are haram, such as alcohol, cigarette companies that sell pork, casinos, for example, and the like. Also, its nidam is also haram, meaning that in their memorandum of association or their articles of association, they have clauses that are haram. For example, you could say that we will. There's a clause that allows them to borrow money on riba from banks that deal in riba. Right. These type of companies, the scholars of they say that it's impermissible for you to buy shares in these companies as well. The third type of company are sharikas that are mukhtalata, companies that have a mixture of halal and haram. And they're companies that their services are halal, so they offer halal products. Not companies, ikhwan, that offer halal and haram products. They're not considered to be mixed companies. They fall into the second category. So if a company sells halal and haram products, it's still purely haram. It's still a purely haram contract. That haram product that they are selling destroys the halal that they're selling. Do you understand? So here, these companies that we're talking about, they purely sell halal commodities or products, okay? And their memorandum of association is also halal. However, the problem lies in their administration, the way the board members, the directors of the company, the way they run the company. So the directors are known for example, purchasing commodities that are impermissible, although the company doesn't. Or for example, or even better still, a better example is the directors, they invest in riba-based banks or riba-based banks, or they borrow money on riba from banks or conventional banks. The scholars, rahimahullah ta'ala, they say that these type of companies fall into the mushtabihat. The hadith of Nu'man ibn Bashir, where he says, إِنَّ الْحَلَالَ بَيِّنْ وَإِنَّ الْحَرَامَ بَيِّنْ وَبَيْنُهُمَا أُمُورٌ مُشْتَبِهَاتٌ. The halal is clear, the haram is clear, and between them are issues that are from the mushtabihat, doubtful matters. And the qa'idah, the principle when it comes to doubtful matters, is for you to abstain from them. However, they haven't specifically said that it's haram for you to buy shares in these companies. What they've said is that they're from the mushtabihat, and it is better for your religion, as the Prophet says, فَمَنِ اتَّقَى الشُّبُهَاتِ, whoever abandons shubuhat, فَقَدْ اسْتَبْرَأَ لِدِينِهِ وَعِرْضِهِ. Then this person has freed themselves, absolved himself, or his deen and his ird. This person has safeguarded his deen and his ird. So now we move on to al-qa'ida al-thaniya, the next qa'ida, the next principle. Al-ibratu fil uqud lil-maqasid wal-ma'ani la lil-alfadhi wal-mabani. We give consideration when it comes to contracts and transactions to the objectives and the intentions behind the contract, not to the wording and the statements involved in the contract. So we give precedence to the objective and to the intention behind the contract, not to the lafz and the word that is coming out of your mouth. What's the fa'idah of this? The fa'idah of this is if a person uses a particular word that has a particular meaning in the Arabic language to mean something else. So for example, the scholars, they give, if someone says, say for example, you are say for example, you're a young man looking to get married, and one of the elders in the masjid, he comes to you and he says to you, Fulan, ta'al, come here. And you go up to him and he says, Bi'tuka binti bi'20 alfa. I have sold you my daughter for 20,000. And min shiddatil farah, from sheer happiness, you say, qabilt, I accept. The scholars, rahimahumullah ta'ala, they say, is this transaction a financial transaction? In which case, we say that this type of transaction is haram because you cannot sell a human being as a slave, so it's nullified. Or do we say we look at the context, which is, from the context, what the old man is saying is, ankahtuka binti, I have married you my daughter. So he uses al-lafdhu bay' wal-maqsad huwa al-nikah. So the lafz that he used is bay', is buying and selling, and the meaning is al-nikah. The meaning is al-nikah, which is to get married. So here, the scholars, they say, based upon the qa'idah that we've just mentioned, we give precedence to the meaning behind the actual act. So we say that this man has khalas, there were two witnesses right there when he was saying it, and he's the wali. Then we say that the nikah, that nikah is yumda, is a correct nikah, and it's not a bay', it's not a bay'. Another example is if a person, for example, say a person, you go on and borrow money from your friend. You borrow 100,000 from your friend, whose name is Zayd. You borrow 100,000 from Zayd. And then someone comes and says, Ana akfaluhu bishart anhu bari. Someone comes and says, I will be his guarantor on the one condition that he is no longer held liable for that 100,000. Does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. He's used the lafzul guarantor, kafala. هنا استعمل لفظ الكفالة. So اللفظ لفظ الكفالة. But what he means is something else. A guarantor is someone who guarantees, who takes the liability, your liability, onto his shoulders. He takes your liability from himself to yourself. So he's a guarantor. But here, he's saying, I am going to be his guarantor on one condition, that he's no longer liable. If he's no longer liable, then he doesn't need a guarantor. Do you understand? What he means here is al-hawala. Al-hawala is assigning debt to yourself from someone else. It's called al-hawala. So what he is saying is, khalas, I am taking responsibility for his debt. You can now, this debt is liable to me. He is now bari. So the scholars, they say, we take this to mean al-hawala based on his objective and his niyyah. Right. Another example is if a person says, I have gifted you my car for £1,000. So the word gift, it doesn't make sense. If it's a gift, why do I have to pay £1,000? So what he means by gift here is al-bay', is buying and selling. Okay, is buying and selling. I have sold you my car. So in this instance, we take the meaning, not the actual love. Right. Another example is if a person says, I've sold you my car for free. I am now going to sell you my car for free. It doesn't make sense. Sell free. Those two words usually don't end up, you don't use those two words in one sentence. Okay? So again, the lafz is bay', but the intention behind it is al-hiba. Right. So from the scholars, rahimahumullah ta'ala, they've derived from this qa'idah that it is not a condition from the conditions of bay' or shira, from the conditions of buying and selling, to actually say something. Okay? You don't actually have to utter any words when you're buying and selling. In fact, you can actually buy and sell. You can actually buy and sell bil-fi'l, with actions, without even saying anything. An example is something known as bay' al-mu'ata. Bay' al-mu'ata is when a person, for example, goes into your local, say you go to your local off-license, you go to your local shop, you get a bottle of water, you know how much it costs, £1. You put the pound on the table and you walk away. And the person obviously is there looking at it. You haven't actually physically said anything, but that bay' is sahih, is correct. Although you haven't actually, there was no ijab or qabul, there was no offering, there was no acceptance. So this bay', the scholars, they call it bay' al-mu'ata, wa huwa yajuz. Also the scholars, they say that the bay' also, selling and buying, from min furu'i hadhihi al-qa'ida, from the furu' of this qa'ida, this principle, is that selling and buying can also occur with writing. Okay, so you can actually write to someone that you're going to sell him something, and it is considered to be correct. The transaction is final. Okay. However, there are two conditions for this to be correct. The first condition, لا بد أن تكون الكتابة مستبينة وأن تكون مرسومة. The first condition is that the kitaba, the writing, has to be clear and definitive, and the person who wrote the actual letter has to be known. So it has to be someone it can't be anonymous. It can't be an anonymous letter. The person has to be known. What does this mean? Say, for example, I'll give you an example in talaq. The scholars, this is an example that they give. Say, for example, someone, and this is an example the scholars give, rahimahullah ta'ala, someone is sitting next to his wife, and he writes, and he looks at her, and he says, he does this. And he writes in thin air, anti taliq. He actually writes it without actually saying it. You are divorced. Does this divorce occur? It doesn't occur because the handwriting is not definitive, it's not clear, it's in thin air. Or someone writes on water. He writes on water, he takes his pen and he writes on water, anti taliq. You are divorced. It doesn't occur because the handwriting or the writing isn't definitive, isn't clear. Also, another example that they give is if a person writes on another person's skin. So with that example, if a person writes on his wife's skin with his bare fingers, not with a pen, and he says, you are divorced. This is another example that they give. This type of divorce does not occur. And also it has to, the person, it has to be known. The person who actually wrote the letter, it could be an email, okay, it could be just a normal letter, then it has to be, the person has to be known. Right. The second condition is that the condition of qabul. So how does the acceptance occur? The acceptance occurs as soon as the person, the buyer, the one who's the other party, reads the letter and accepts in his heart. That's it. The acceptance has occurred. The bay' is final. Okay? As soon as he reads it, the bay' is final. Obviously, they accept. Now, so it's in the same majlis. So in the same, the sitting there. So if the letter was in an envelope and it was sitting next to his desk for a week, okay, there is no qabul. That act or that contract has not been finalized until he opens the envelope, takes out the letter, and he reads it. So the next lesson, or the next qa'idah, sorry, is قاعدة أن القصود مؤثرة في العقود. This qa'idah is similar to the previous qa'idah, and there are certain similarities. Al-qusud, intentions, affect the integrity of the contract. Okay, objectives, they affect the integrity of the contract. And an example we can give from the types of buyu' that happen nowadays is bay' al-taqsid min ajli al-mal. Say for example you're broke, okay, you need money. Okay, so you go and purchase a product in installments, not because you want the product, but because you want to sell the product on. So you've purchased it on credit in installments, but you want to sell it on ala tul, in the same instance. Okay, so it's basically, if a person, say for example, wants to purchase a car, no, he doesn't want to purchase a car rather, he needs £10,000, okay, he needs £10,000, and he might be going to Hajj or whatever, he wants to send £10,000, so he goes to the car dealer and he purchases purchases a car for £10,000 on credit, okay, in installments. So the car dealer says the first month you're going to give me £10,000 in 10 months. So every month I want £1,000 from you. You say khalas qabiltu, you know that you're going to sell it on. So you don't really want to drive the car, okay? So you then, after you've taken the car, you then go and sell the car for £10,000, for £8,000, for £100,000, it doesn't matter. Okay, but you still owe the car dealer. Okay, but the only difference is now that you have cash in your hand, you can use that cash and you're going to pay off the car dealer, maybe through your salary or your ratib. Okay, the scholars, they say that this is permissible. Okay, this is permissible. This type of bay' is permissible. However, there are certain conditions to its permissibility. The first condition is that you don't resell the same commodity to the person you bought the commodity from, either directly or indirectly. Is that clear? Okay, so you don't turn around. So after the car dealer has given you the car and you bought the car on credit, you don't say to the car dealer, hang on a minute, 1 second, you're a car dealer, sah? Okay, I want you to purchase this car from me now on the spot sale. Okay, so the car dealer then gives you £8,000. Okay, so how much has he earned? How much? £2,000. He's earned £2,000 or £9,000. This type of bay' is bay'ul ina. It's called bay'ul ina. Okay, and bay'ul ina is from the major sins. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith narrated by Ibn Umar, he says, سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول, I heard the message of Allah ﷺ say, إذا تبايعتم بالعينة وأخذتم أذناب البقر ورضيتم بالزرع وتركتم الجهاد سلط الله عليكم ذلا لا ينزعه أو لا ينزعه حتى ترجعوا إلى دينكم. If the Prophet says, when you enter into a ina transaction and you take hold of the tails of cattle and you are content with farming and you forsake jihad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause humiliation to prevail over you and He will not withdraw it until you return to your religion. This hadith is in Sunan Abi Dawood and in Musnad al-Imam Ahmad, and it has been deemed as sahih and authentic by Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala fi Sahih Abi Dawood. So this type of bay' is called bay'u al-ina. It's called bay'u al-ina. Okay? The first situation where you go and sell it to someone else, not the original person, not the person you bought it from, is called bay'u al-tawarruq. Okay? And the scholars rahimahullah ta'ala, they have differed as to whether it's halal or haram. The first situation where you go and bay'u taqsid li ajli al-mal, you go and purchase a commodity from a particular person and then you sell it on to someone else. The scholars, they've differed as to whether it's halal or haram. Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah ta'ala is under the opinion that that type of bay' is deemed as impermissible because the person's intention is not the actual commodity and it's to gain wealth. So that person is buying money with money, basically. That's the hujjah of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. As for the contemporary scholars like Shaykh bin Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala, Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, and other than them, they are under the opinion that this type of bay' is permissible and it is jaiz. طيب. Another condition, that's the first condition, that you don't sell it back to the original owner. The second condition is that the sil'a or the commodity has to be known. So the commodity or the sil'a that you're purchasing has to be a commodity that is known to the person. The attributes of that commodity has to be guaranteed. Okay? Even if the person doesn't really want the commodity. You can't just go to the bank and say, I need £10,000. And the bank says, okay, we're going to sell you something. Okay, we're going to sell you a commodity. We don't know what it is right now, but we'll sell you something. Okay? Now, this bay' is la yajuz. It's impermissible because you don't know what you're purchasing. The third condition is that you need to know whether the seller, the person you're going to, you need to be sure that that person has possession of that commodity. Or that the buyer, or basically, the person has, the bank or the person you're purchasing from has possession of that commodity. Nowadays, the banks, for example, they sell things that they do not own. Or they sell an asset, for example, to you and to me and to different people. So they sell the same asset to more than one person. If you know that this is the case for a particular bank, okay, for example, an example that the scholars give is there was a particular bank in the Middle East that sold, that was claiming to have steel, ma'adin, some steel and aluminium in Mali. Oh, sorry, no, not in Mali, sorry, in Bahrain. And anyone who came to them, they would say to them, okay, we're going to give you a loan, but you have to purchase that steel and that commodity. That steel that's in Bahrain. So they were basically saying to the ulama, the scholars, we have now defined the commodity and the goods. So, and then the second person comes and they sell him steel and ma'adin and aluminium. Until hundreds and thousands of people were buying steel and ma'adin. And the scholars, they said, subhanAllah, they said that if there is so much steel in Bahrain, then Bahrain would have sank into the oceans. There would be no more Bahrain. From the amount of steel there is in Bahrain that they're selling, it's لا يعقل that they have all this steel and they're selling it to thousands and thousands of people, the same steel. It doesn't make sense. So if this is the case, and you know from your common sense that it's not the case, then in this instance you should not enter into this type of transaction with that type of entity or bank. The next qa'ida, al-qa'ida al-rabi'a, so Ikhwan, we're summarizing to the best of our ability. We are literally skimming the surface. And there are so many other issues, but obviously due to time limitations we cannot really delve into these issues. The fourth qa'ida is إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ عَنْ تَرَاضٍ. Bay' or selling and buying only happens or occurs through mutual consent. Right? And this qa'ida indicates the most important of conditions when it comes to buying and selling, is that there has to be mutual consent between the buyer and the seller. Okay? And the consent or mutual consent, the whole consent, affects the integrity of the buying and selling of the transaction from two angles. The first angle is from the angle of the acceptability of the transaction. Right? So whatever you agree on, whatever the buyer and the seller agree on, then it is impermissible for one of them to try and deceive the other. It is impermissible to try and deceive the other. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-bay'an bil-khiyar ma lam yatafarraqa." The one who's buying and selling, they are al-khiyar, they are given mutual choice and consent, as long as they do not depart ways. فَإِذَا صَدَقَا وَبَيَّنَا بُورِكَ لَهُمَا فِي بَيْعِهِمَا. If they are truthful and honest and they clearly clarify everything to each other, then barakah will be placed in their transaction. وَإِذَا كَذَبَا وَكَتَمَا مُحِقَتْ بَرَكَةُ بَيْعِهِمَا. However, if they are dishonest and they hide things and they conceal things, then the barakah is lifted from their buying and selling. That's the first jihad. Second jihad is that from the angle of the effects of their consent. From the effect that consent has upon the actual transaction. So whatever they have agreed upon, yumda, is operative. Whatever they have agreed upon is finalized. Okay? And one party cannot revoke what they have agreed on with the other party. This is after they've obviously parted ways. Okay. An example is if someone comes to you and says to you, I will sell you my house on the condition that I live in it for 1 more month. And then you say, خلاص قبلت, here's the money, خلاص تم العقد. So now you've agreed that you will let him purchase your house, you will let that person be live in your house for an extra month. So it's operative. That is a legally binding contract now. So mutual consent is accepted, okay? It's accepted based upon these conditions. So mutual consent is something that is acceptable according to these conditions, or بهذه الشروط, or in subject to these conditions. The first condition is that they don't consent to something that is haram. So if they consent to riba, for example, one of them says, "Khalas, I now mutual consent. I'm willing to take riba. Give me that 1,000. I'll give you 1,200 later. What? It's my haq. I'm willing to consent to riba." Then this is impermissible. It's not yours to consent in the first place because this person is contradicting a dalil. The second condition is that the taradi, or the consent, cannot contradict or negate the main objective of the transaction. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that transactions, the scholars, they call it al-maqasid al-asliya lil-aqd, the main transactions, okay, the main objectives of the transaction. If it contradicts the main objective of the transaction, then that consent is void or revoked. Okay, it's not something that is permissible. An example is if someone says, "I will sell you my house on one condition, that you never live in it." Okay, this negates the main objective of the transaction. What's the point of buying a house if you cannot live in it? Another example that the scholars give when it comes to marital transactions is if a father says to his soon-to-be son-in-law, he says, I will marry you my daughter on the condition that you do not touch her, on the condition that you do not have any sexual relations with her. Here, this shart yukhalif maqsood al-aqd. It contradicts the main objective of the aqd, which makes it impermissible or nullified. The third condition is that there cannot be that there isn't a legislative reason to revoke the consent of the two people that are consenting to the actual transaction. If there is, then that takes precedence over their consent. An example is if, for example, a judge or a qadi is faced with a person who has debts and liabilities, and that person has assets that cover these liabilities, but for some reason or other they are unwilling to cover or to repay their liabilities or debt. So the judge then forces the sale of this person's assets, whether they're cars, homes, whatever, land, in order to cover his debts to the creditors. Okay? Here, he's obviously not going to be happy that his house or his car is being sold, but his consent now isn't considered. His consent, we don't consider his consent now, because his consent is contradicting a legislative ruling by the qadi. Because the qadi and the judge, whatever ruling they give is operative, is a legislative ruling. The proof of this qaida is the verse where Allah says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la ta'kulu amwalakum baynakum bil batil." O you who believe, do not devour or consume your wealth unjustly. إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ تِجَارًا عَنْ تَرَاضٍ مِنكُمْ, except if it is by mutual trade, through mutual agreement. So there has to be some mutual consent and agreement. And also the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith narrated by Ibn Majah, authenticated by Shaykh al-Albani, where he says, إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ عَنْ تَرَاضٍ. Indeed, buying and selling happens through mutual consent. So the next mas'ala is, what are the pillars of mutual consent? How do we know that someone is consent or is happy with the buying and selling or the transaction? The scholars, they say that there are two pillars. The first pillar is al-ilm. The person needs to know what they are buying. If a person is unsure, there's doubts So it's uncertain as to regarding whether regarding the commodity or the sil'ah that they're buying, then this person cannot, even if they say qabilta, I accept, this person, their rida and their mutual consent is not considered, is not operative. And another example is if the person who's selling the commodity gives, if it's a commodity that is ala dhimma, and it's goods that are not in front of him, and he describes the goods and gives it a description that isn't accurate. There are a lot of defects. So here, the person has agreed upon those attributes that are described. Okay, then he sees the sil'ah, he sees, say for example, the seller says, I'm going to sell you a brand new BMW, and it's a very nice car, it's black, it's got like 10,000 mileage, is 10,000, whatever, and then he gives these conditions, he gives this consent, these attributes. And then when the car is presented in front of you, you find that the car doesn't have an engine. Okay? He didn't actually say the car doesn't have an engine. He just said, I'm going to sell you a BMW. He can turn around and say, I never told you that it had an engine. But here, obviously, the consent isn't considered. Why? Because we know that in order for a car to be a car, this is min al-urf, min urf al-nas, in order for a car to be a car, then it needs to have an engine present under the bonnet. Okay? So this type of transaction is impermissible. The second pillar is al-ikhtiyar, that the person gives their consent without there being any duress, without there being any, they're not being forced to sell. So they're basically consenting and agreeing out of their own free will, their freedom of choice. So they're exercising their freedom of choice. There's no duress. In that case, then it's sahih. But however, if there's any duress, and the scholars, rahimahullah ta'ala, they give an example of a type of bay' where a person is afraid there is a zalim or an oppressor in the city or in town, for example. It could be a ruler, it could be anyone else, and this person is taking the wealth of people by force. So this person comes to you and says to you, listen, akhi, I have a car. I don't want this person taking my car from me. I'm going to sell it to you because you're someone of strength. He's afraid of you. You come from a very strong tribe, very strong family. He's not going to touch you, my car, if it's under your name. So you sell your car to that particular person. Here the scholars, rahimahullah ta'ala, they say that this transaction is void and nullified because there's no mutual consent. This person is only selling his car out of fear. What's imperative is for the buyer to basically help his Muslim brother in another way, by either stopping the oppression or by doing something that is basically permissible or halal. So this type of bay' is where the person is forced to sell his goods, and this type of bay' is impermissible. The next qa'ida, al-qa'ida al-khamisa, la yan'aqidu al-bay' illa ala mal. Okay, that buying and selling does not happen, or financial transactions do not occur except with wealth, except with something of monetary value. Okay, so what we mean by mal is ما فيه منفعة مباحة مطلقا سواء كان عينا أو منفعة. So wealth is anything that is of use, anything that can be used, and it is a tangible, whether it is a tangible object or whether it is a usufruct, whether it's something that can be used. Right. So what do we mean by manfa'a? So what we mean by manfa'a is we do not buy or sell things that have no manfa'a, have no use. And how do we know if something is useful? We go back to the urf of the people. We go back to a normal, rational, logical human being, what they see as something that is of use. So we go back to what people in the community where you live, what they see as useful. And this is bil ijma', and all of the scholars agree upon this. So for example, say for example, you want to purchase canaries. Okay, you want to purchase canaries. Okay, and the place that you live in, people see canaries and as a beautification for the home. They like the sounds that they make at home. It's soothing. It helps with depression, as some people say. So the people see it as a manfa'a. Okay, so in this instance, we see it as a manfa'a. So buying and selling canaries, although there's no ayah or dalil or hadith which says it's halal or haram, we consider it to be halal. Why? Because there is a manfa'a. What about purchasing insects? If someone says, for example, I'm going to purchase insects, literally just insects. Here there is no manfa'a. According to the uqala, the logical human beings out there, there is no manfa'a when it comes to buying and selling insects. So this means that this type of bay' is impermissible. Allahumma, if it's, for example, if you're a fisherman and you're fishing and you purchase worms, and I don't know why anyone would sell worms, but say, for example, you go to a place where people sell worms in order to go fishing. So you're using it as bait for the fish. That's another issue, another case. But the asal is that selling insects, for example, is impermissible. Right. So things that are of benefit, for example, are clothes, for example, jewelry, shoes, whatever, and the like. Things that are considered to be haram, for example, that have manfa'a, because there are items that have a use, but that use is haram or impermissible. Like, for example, pigs, selling the meat of pigs, or pigs in general, the selling dogs, for example, Azakumullah, dogs that are not dogs of, that are used to as guard dogs, for example, or hunting dogs. If they're used as hunting dogs, then the scholars, there's a difference of opinion, but the correct opinion is that you are allowed to purchase a hunting dog or a guard dog. But if they're used as pets, for example, it becomes impermissible. And wahakada. And also there are issues that there are items that are permissible. So there are items that are permissible and they have a use when it's under certain extreme circumstances, when there is a necessity. For example, lubsul harir lil-rijal. For example, we know that it is impermissible or haram for a man to wear silk. However, if a person, for example, if a particular man has a skin rash or skin allergy, which prevents him from wearing, for example, cotton or woolen clothes or any other fabric, and the only fabric that this person can wear is silk, then in this instance we say it is permissible for that person to wear silk and to purchase silk and then to wear it because of the haja. Right. The next qaida, number 6, is لا ينعقد البيع إلا من مالك أو مأذون له. لا ينعقد البيع إلا من مالك أو مأذون له. طيب إن شاء الله تعالى we'll stop here إن شاء الله. نقف عند هذا الحد. I know we're supposed to stop at 7 o'clock, but I can see that many of you are tired. So we'll stop here إن شاء الله تعالى and continue. What time do we continue? It's 7:30? 7:15. Now, so we'll have inshallah ta'ala a 15-minute break, okay? So we'll start at 7 or 7:05 inshallah ta'ala. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.